Real good question. And it gets to one thing about alcohol that's a negative compared to gasoline, which is it does not evaporate as well. Like, for instance, recently, I just won a battle with the California Air Resources Board that they were saying, well, because alcohol, as sold in California, has 15% gasoline in it, we regulate it as if it's gasoline because it's got a Reid vapor pressure, in other words, an evaporation rate over 4 pounds, and it's got petroleum products in it. So I wrote back to them and said, well, I'm going to run alcohol, and instead of gasoline being mixed with it, I'm going to mix 5% ether with it, which is made from alcohol. Ethyl ether is made from alcohol. So you can't regulate me. They sputtered and popped and wrote back to me and said, we can't regulate you. So that's a non-petroleum, completely non-petroleum fuel that will evaporate well enough to run in Alaska. So that's why right now alcohol sold at the pump in the Midwest has 15% gasoline in it to make it easy to start on a cold morning. Totally unnecessary. What you need to do is, to get the car started on alcohol, is provide for cold weather. So we've done that in a lot of different ways on the funky scale back in the 1980s. We would have a little lawnmower tank under the hood, a little pump to a push button on the dashboard, and a little squirter on the top of the air-fuel mixture, right on the top of the carburetor. And we'd give a little push, and it would give us a little squirt of, usually gasoline because it was cheap, and that would start the car. So anything that starts the car, it'll continue to run on alcohol just fine. So you need a little bit of something volatile to start the car. The other thing you can do, and we did this in the 80s also, is we drilled a hole in the body of the carburetor and we put in basically a diesel glow plug. Now this is, in diesels, to get them started on cold mornings, you got to have a hot place where the mixture coming up will ignite. So what we did is we put that into the side of the carburetor and you pushed it for 30 seconds. It heated up all the fuel in the carburetor and started it just fine. There are dozens of ways to do cold starting, but all of them required some hardware. And the car companies, as I'll be talking about, when they got forced to make cars that ran on alcohol, didn't want to add hardware. So they got it, the rule made that they could add required that the gasoline be added to the alcohol at 15%. 85% alcohol is still better than, no alcohol at all at the pump, but it's not the best plan.
Dave?
Yes?
To get back to Brazil for a second, how does one get a hold of a vehicle made in Brazil?
Can't do it. Can't do it right now because there's a huge amount of regulations that have to do with safety equipment, this, that, and the other thing. So it would take someone with a fair amount of capital to, to go ahead and refit those vehicles to fit U.S. standards. And that's not cheap, when you don't do it on the assembly line. So Brazil is actually toying with doing special U.S. runs of their vehicles right now because there's this huge upsurge in interest in alcohol, which you guys haven't heard about.
What, I was talking about Alaska, you're talking about the Midwest, but what temperature is it that you start to run into problems with the temperature?
In a fuel-injected car, which everyone has now, probably about 15 degrees. So around here it would never be an issue. But if you're in a carbureted car, down around 35, 40, you can start to run into hard starting. An older carbureted car. So you'd have to put a cold start device on, that's all. And that's, like I say, the cold start device there's commercially made ones because, diesels don't start on cold mornings. There's ones that have what looks like a little propane torch bottle, but it actually has ether in it. It goes, to the manifold. You pull a little lever on the dash, it gives a squirt, the car starts. That's like a $15 device, This is not a technological difficulty.
You're going to get around to OBD2 and California smog stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll get there. Oh.